of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't lived the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get punked, or some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in they Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters don't move. Whatever clique you choose, you better stick to your rules. I done seen cats get hit and the force will lift them off their shoes. The gun tower got the power, they will kill you if you move. The gun tower got the power, they will kill you if you move.
Say what's cracking, YouTube?
It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Yard down! Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. Let's hop right up into this video. But before we do, I had surgery yesterday, some dental work done, so my mouth is still a little sore, a little swole, so it may cause me to talk a little funny, but the show must go on. Also, man, shout out to Active Sports TV. Good brother that I met. Y'all definitely be sure to go tune in to his show, watch his show. That's Active Sports TV. Also, shout out to William. I believe his name was William Brown. It was a brother who I encountered, talked to for a while at Starbucks. Ironically, he was a former LA police officer. I believe he said 27 years, 32 years. We had a good conversation, man. Just letting you know that I ain't forgot you. Hope you hear this shout out. Shout out to you. Now, let's get right up into this video, right? So, a couple of days ago, I got a request by a viewer who watches my channel, and his name is Gets187, and he suggested I do this video, so shout out to you, Gets187. He wanted to hear about a few of the things that was my first time in prison, being a person who had got sentenced to prison for the first time. You know, for those who may not know, outside of doing about 30 days in juvenile hall and doing 60 days in the Yellowstone County Jail out there in Montana, I had never actually been to prison before. So he was interested in knowing what was it like getting sentenced. He was interested in knowing what was it like for a person getting 16 years plus life in prison for the first time, right? And so to give you guys a brief, So to give you guys some brief background history about my case, right? So initially I was charged with 3 attempted murders stemming from a party. One person unfortunately got shot in the head. He did not die. He ended up having a lobotomy, and you had 2 other people who was injured and shot in the leg. One of those being one of my homies who I had grew up with. So from that point in time, I go on the run. I'm on the run for about a year. And once I'm arrested, I'm also charged with another murder. The murder that I was charged with was I was charged with the murder of a witness who was participating in that first attempted murder situation there, right? And so when I first got because I stayed in the county jail, in Riverside County Jail, about 2 years fighting those charges. Initially, I went to the attempted murder trial, and I was found guilty, and I was sentenced to 9 years plus life. And then, like I said, I still had a trailing murder case that I was also fighting, right? And so he wanted to know what it was like being sentenced to 9 years plus life, right? Around the age of 22, I believe I was, somewhere around there. And to be honest, I was relieved, to be honest, because I thought that I was going to get much more time than that. I was expecting to get 25 years to life, somewhere around there. Now, keep in mind, I had been in the county jail at that time for about a year. And so I'm seeing people go to court, people who I knew get sentenced and get a lot of time. One of my homies who I grew up with, who was about 19 at the time, he was in jail he had one murder. I don't remember the exact circumstances around his murder, but at the age of 19, he was given life without parole. There was another dude who I was locked up with from Riverside County who ended up getting life without parole. And so I'm seeing people get 35 to life, 50 to life, and stuff like that. So to be honest, I was surprised and relieved that I didn't get more time. And then, like I said, I still have the trailing murder case. Also for me, right, and everybody is different, but for me, to be honest, going to prison, getting sentenced to jail time while no one wants to go to prison and no one wants to get sentenced to jail time, to me, it came with the lifestyle, If you couldn't handle it, you shouldn't have been in that lifestyle. Unfortunately, for me and so many others, I was brainwashed to the point where I was willing to accept that type of time because I knew it came with the things that I was out there doing in the streets. I believe that a lot of us, when we get arrested for whatever reason, we believe that we have a very good chance of beating the charges, and which I thought, everybody that was involved in my situation was gang members. I'm sticking to the code of the street, and I'm expecting everybody else to stick to the code of the street, to stick to the code of the streets as well and keep things in the streets. But unfortunately, as I know now, and as many of us know now, those things do not always happen. You had some of these dudes who were supposed to be the biggest, toughest gang members going down to the police department, making statements, so on and so forth, right? And so, that's just part of the game, And so then they also asked, what was my first bus ride like? The whole entire time that I was in prison, getting on the bus or transferring from one prison to another was probably one of the things that I hated the most, because you're on a bus, you're shackled around the waist to your hands and stuff, and depending on where you're going, you could be taking a 7-8 hour ride, sometimes longer than that, and so you're sitting on the bus, you got to be quiet, it's a long ride, and it's definitely unpleasant. So I remember the first time, because when you leave the county jail, they send you to what's known as a reception center. I ended up going to Tehachapi. Now the reception center is where you will be diagnosed, you'll be assessed depending on several different factors, from the time you got to how old you are, to your charge, and then they'll decide what prison that you that they want you to go and do your time in, because California prison system is based on a point system, and so certain charges may carry certain points. If you were a certain age, you may get certain points for that. If you hadn't completed high school, you may get certain points added onto your score for that. And then, of course, the higher your score, the higher of a prison that they put you in terms of security, right? And so eventually, I got deemed to go to a level 4 180, which was the highest level of security that prisons in California have, right? And so when I finally left Tehachapi and I was getting sent to Salinas, I don't know how long the bus ride was, maybe about 8-9 hours, but we done what is known as a layover, which means on the trip going there, we'll stop at a prison, spend the night at that particular prison, and then wake up the next morning and continue our trip. So of course, we had to get off the bus. Now, where we happened to stop at was a prison known as Corcoran. Now, at that time, Corcoran was a notorious prison for setting prisoners up on the shoe yard, having them fight, and then you had the guards betting on these fights, and then in some cases, some of those prisoners were out there shot, and I believe 6 or 7 of them got killed. This was a notorious prison. It was a very different time, and things was just very, very cold-hearted back then, right? So I remember stepping off the bus, like I said, just for a layover. We're just laying over. We're just spending the night. It's maybe about 6 or 7 o'clock at night. We get off the bus. Before we get off the bus, you have these, you have a whole bunch of, they call them the goon squad. You had a whole bunch of COs come, greeting us to get us off the bus and stuff. These dudes are big, giant dudes, man. The smallest dude may have been 6'2", 6'3", These are big old giant dudes, maybe 6'2", 6'3", 6'5", 270 pounds. The biggest of the biggest, it seems like, that they had. So they're screaming all these orders. And so when they finally got us off the bus, they're uncuffing us, and they want us to put our chin, they taking the chains, our leg shackles off us, but they want us to put our chin on the wall while they're cuffing us again. And they literally got us with our chin on the wall like this for about 40 minutes. And so they're screaming and barking orders. And at some point, man, I just got tired. I just brought my chin down. You know, they're screaming, don't bring your chin off the wall and don't look around. Look forward. If you look to the side, I'm going to F you up. And so one CO came and got in my ear and he said, hey, man, put your effing chin back on that wall. Look up. I said, man, my neck is hurting, man. I'm not supposed to do that. He said, man, do not F with me. I will effing hurt you. You know, these dudes were serious, man, and they was dogging us, snatching us off the bus, you know, to the point where I got to thinking in my mind, like, damn, do these dudes know that we're just here for a layover? You know, that we haven't, because when we get off the bus, we go do the layover in the SHU. It's essentially the SHU where they sent us to, right? And so one of the things that came to mind is, damn, man, they must have really dogged those Crips from East Coast who came through here several months earlier. There was a really widely well-known, publicized happening in Calipatria prison. You had several Crips from East Coast run up in the program office and stab some of the guards up in there. And so eventually that's where they shot them to. You know, they dogged them out, beat them up real bad, cut their hair off. They ended up winning a lawsuit behind all that stuff, right? But I remember that was one of the things that was going through my mind. It's like, dang, if they're doing us like this and we're just on a layover, I know they dogged those dudes out there, right? And so he also wanted to know who was my first cellie, right? Now, my very first cellie, I believe, when I got to Tehachapi, the prison itself, which was the reception center, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was a dude by the name of Lily from Palm Springs. Actually, Palm Springs is not too far from Bannon, and we knew some of the same people. I believe that's who it was. But later on, once I moved on and got to Salinas, when they assigned me to a cell, I walked to the cell and there was a white dude in the cell. Now, like I said, this is my first time going to prison. I'm getting ready to go up in the cell. When they open the cell, I'm walking up in there. The white dude looks up. He probably was in his early 30s or whatever. You could tell he had done some time. Or he said, hey, man, what's going on? I said, hey, they told me to come up in here. This is my cell. He said, oh, no, hold on, man. Hold on. Something's wrong here, right? Now, I was going to go in the cell because coming from Riverside County, they'll put a black dude and a white dude in the cell in some of those tanks, right? I've had white cellies before, right? So I didn't know any better. So he came out, he went and talked to the guard in the tower, and eventually they just moved me right next door, you know. My first holiday was the 4th of July. And that was when I was in reception at Tehachapi. I probably got to Tehachapi probably about July the 1st, somewhere around there. And so the first holiday, of course, was the 4th of July. And the food actually was pretty good back then. You know, they gave us I believe it was a quarter chicken. It was a lot of food, right? And the only bad thing is you had to eat everything in about 5 minutes. You know, you had to hurry up and whoop that stuff down. They gave you a small amount of time to eat. Then you had to get up and go back to your building, right? And so as I'm walking back to the building, I happen to be walking with a friend of mine, Dan Tanner from Long Beach Insane. We happen to meet up once again there in Tehachapi, right? And so the alarm goes off. Now, I didn't know anything about the alarm, get down or whatever. So once the alarm goes off, everybody's starting to get down. So I'm asking Tanner, hey, what's up? What's going on? He said, homie, you better get down. So, you know, I got down and stuff like that. But I had never been informed about, you know, the alarms and all that type of stuff. So all that was new to me, man. Now, he wanted to know also, what was it like the very first time that I went to the store, or some people call it canteen, some people call it commissary. Well, that was later on when I got to Salinas Valley, if I can remember correctly, right? And so when it was time for me to go to the store, you know, they like maybe about a day or two before you go to the store, they'll pass out store lists. And depending on your last two numbers is what draws you go to, because they had first draw, because they can't get everybody at once. So maybe if your last two numbers ended in was anywhere from 0 to 33, you was first draw. Then if it was anywhere from like 34 to maybe 60, you was second draw. And then maybe 61 to the end to 99, you was third draw. So my last two happened to be 7-7. So I fell under third draw. So they'll give you a store list. a few days before you go to the store. And by me never being to prison before, I didn't really know exactly what all to get. I know it was a few things that I wanted, some deodorant and stuff like that, some chips, some zoom zooms and wham whams, but I didn't really know what was going to be needed or what was a necessity in prison, right? So my cellie, he helped me out, pick a few items. He had been to prison before. He told me it was best if I get a hot pot. A hot pot is like a little almost like a little coffee mug or a little coffee pot that we could plug up and use to boil water, for our soups, for our coffee, cooking, things of that nature and stuff. And so, he, advised me on getting a couple things like chili in the can and stuff like that, in order to make spreads and stuff like that. So, it definitely was a eye-opening experience. Back then, I believe soups was only 20 cents, so of course you want to get a whole bunch of soups. You would have people would sometimes get maybe 8-9 cases of soups, 10-20 cases of soups. And the reason being is because a lot of times on those level 4s, we may go on lockdown for extensive period of times due to violent crimes, people getting stabbed, so on and so forth. Sometimes you might be locked in the cell, literally a year or two, and so you definitely want to have enough food to survive, and you definitely want to have enough hygiene. You would see people sometimes with 30-40 bars of soap, 10 bottles of shampoo, just enormous amounts of hygiene and stuff like that, 15-20 bottles of lotion, because they wanted to be able to survive, 20 things of toothpaste. And so eventually, of course, I got my hygiene game together, and I started, as they call it, gelling, doing time. So when they moved me next door, when I tried to go in the cell with the white dude and they moved me next door, my first black cellie actually was a brother by the name of Spook. Spook is from Venice Showline Crip. And so he was my first cellie. Now, at that time, I believe he probably was in his early 40s or late 30s. He had been to prison before already. He had a C number at that time, which basically meant he had been doing a lot of time already. And so yeah, he was my cellie, man. We got along real good. Only thing is he snored real bad, man. So eventually I had to move up out of there. Now, I'm just coming from reception center. He's just coming from reception center. We are both new to prison at that time and don't have any property. So a lot of times, man, he would keep me up at night telling me these stories and stuff. He had a lot of extremely good stories about things that he used to do out there in his hood. And so now it's crazy, right? Because eventually, when I end up leaving Salinas Valley and going down to Ironwood, that's the last time that I saw Spook until much later, around 2016, I ended up going to CMC West, which was a 2-yard, and Spook was there on the 2-yard. And so I've mentioned several times before in different stories that, even though California has about 32 men's prisons, and each prison probably has about 4 yards, so it's a relatively big prison system, but at the same time, the prison system in itself is relatively small, because if you do something, it's going to follow you. So say I had done something that was dishonorable in Salinas back in the days, when I first was there, and Spook happened to be there. Now, when I get to Salinas, he like, okay, that's chill. He done whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. So your reputation always follows you. I have never been in a prison where I wasn't there with others who I had done time with in other prisons. So everything that you do, your reputation is gonna follow you. Spook was also doing life, and so after I went home, I heard maybe about a year later, he also ended up paroling and going home, so shout out to Spook, man. Now, people may want to know about the first time I seen somebody stabbed, and I've told that story before. That was one of the first stories that I told on my YouTube channel. I think the name of that story was something along the lines of, when you're getting ready to get stabbed, everybody knows but you, or something like that, right? And so the situation was a cold situation, right? So I happened to be in a cell with a dude known as Big H, Big Heron, and every time I mention him, a lot of people will confuse that with the Heron that was associated and affiliated with Death Row, who was a Blood. No, this is a different Heron. This was a Crip, and he was from the Grandees. And come to find out, years and years later, this dude was a well-loved, well-connected, well-respected Crip. And so he, by his his reputation and the upstanding individual that he was, he had a lot of respect on that yard. By the time I encountered him, he had already been locked up maybe about 16 years. And so, like I say, through reputation, he had gained a lot of respect. And so a lot of times when things was about to happen on the yard, they would come to him for advice and he would know about it. So before this certain individual got stabbed, he told me that, hey man, this dude is getting ready to get stabbed. Now, when I first got to prison, when I got off the bus in Tehachapi, I rode the bus with a young dude who was about 19. He was extremely apprehensive about going to prison, because that was his first time as well. He was 19. He was sentenced to 15 years to life. He was very gung-ho about staying out of trouble and coming home like at the age of 32 or whatever the numbers was, 34, whatever the math was. Eventually, once he got there and he got with his homies, they ran his points up extremely high, just constantly getting into trouble. Actually, he didn't even really have enough points to be on level 4. They had overrode him, which was basically they'll bump you up even though your points is not that high due to the fact that he had been to California Youth Authority before. And so when we first get off the bus, his homie comes and gives him basically, a welcome to the yard package, some things that he's gonna need, because he's also coming from reception center and he doesn't have anything. So, he gives him basically a care package, toothpaste, some food, some deodorant, some hair grease, things just to get him over until he's able to get to the store, right? So his homie brings him these things. His homie is from his particular hood. He happened to be from LA. And so, they hanging out, his homie was probably in his early 30s. His homie is, showing him the ropes about surviving in prison, so on and so forth, right? So fast forward to maybe a month or two later, all of a sudden more people start trickling in from other prisons, because Salinas Valley at that time was that particular yard. Well, it was a new prison, and that particular yard was new and people were still coming in. And so people start trickling in, and word hits the yard that the homie that has brought out the care package for the young dude who I caught the bus with, he has to get stabbed. And they're gonna get his little homie who he brought the package to stab him. And that's when I said, damn, that's when I realized that prison was an extremely treacherous place. Long story short, he ended up stabbing him a day later. The dude took off running. The big dude who got stabbed, he was big. So I'm thinking that when he tries to stab him, he gonna fight back, maybe whatever, try to take the knife. He stabbed him in the neck. He took off running, kicked on the door, ran to the building, kicked on the door, they let him in, and they put the yard down. Maybe about 5 or 10 minutes later, they came with like one of the little golf cart things they would use for an ambulance, went to the building, got him, and wheeled him off on a stretcher. And that's when I realized that, damn, man, this is a dangerous, dangerous place, because by me sitting in the county jail for so long, I had been down there for about 2 years, so I'm down there, I'm going through the daily rituals of a gang member, right? It's people in there fighting, I'm seeing people fight, whatever, right? So, and then also by the time I got arrested, I had been in the gang life maybe about 7-8 years, somewhere around there. So in my mind, I'm used to the going ons of this particular type of life, and I can survive and thrive in this life because if two things that I wasn't afraid to fight, and I wasn't afraid to get violent if need be, right? And those are some of the crucial things that you need to survive in that type of environment. And then also, when I got to Salinas Valley, the prison didn't look anything in my mind like I had conjured up. I expected to see probably one of them old prisons with bars that you may see on TV or something like that. So when I get to Salinas Valley, it's one of those newly designed 180 prisons. I'm like, oh, this thing damn near looks like a college campus. And so by seeing the looks of it, it also let my guards down in terms of making me nervous or apprehensive or so on and so forth. I didn't appreciate the dangerousness of that prison due to the way it looked. But once I seen that first dude stabbed, then I knew, okay, man, this is a serious prison. And then also, you had a lot of, Southsiders coming there and stuff, and they was doing a lot of stabbing or slicing. Back then, since the prison was new, it was probably hard to get a hold of metal to make knives, but you could always get a hold of a razor, and they was doing a lot of slicing, stabbing their people and stuff. So I'm assuming, they call things like that cleaning the backyard. You know, people coming from other prison who, for whatever reason, are deemed no good. So there was a whole lot of that going on, which made me realize, okay, this is an extremely serious place to be, right? Now, back in those days, and I'm assuming they still have things like that going on now on those level 4 yards. In the tower, as you see behind me, the correctional officer who worked in the tower, he had a Mini 14 assault rifle. There was a big sign on the wall that said no warning shots, and so they definitely would shoot the Mini 14 if they happened to see a situation where they felt someone was potentially could lose his life or could suffer severe injury, right? And so they didn't hesitate to shoot the Mini 14. They also had what was known as a block gun. Sometimes you may hear people who do prison channels in California refer to it as Big Bertha. And what the block gun was, it was a shorter little gun and it shot wooden projectiles, but they came out hard and they would bust your head open. And so the first time I seen the block gun shot is I'm sitting in the chow hall one day. It's me, Big H, my cellie from Compton, and I forget who else was at the table with us. One of his, Big H's homies came up in there. One of his younger homies, his name was Cass. Cass is from Nutty Block. Cass was always with the business, always fighting, always into it, right? And so I believe the Grandies later on turned in to Nutty Block in the younger generation, if I'm not mistaken, right? So anyway, as we're sitting there eating now, Big H's homeboy Cash had been in there before we went in the chow hall, because they feed the chow hall by sections. You know, the chow hall is connected directly to the building. So each building has its own chow hall. Each building is sectioned off into 3 sections, and so A section, B section, C section. And so they feed the buildings by section. So as we get in there, whatever section Cass was in, they was already in there and they was leaving. So as Cass stands up, he turned to Big H. He said, "Hey, cuz, I'm up out of here, cuz." Big H like, what you talking about? He like, "Oh man, I'm just to bust this dude up." Big H like, what you talking about? What you talking? He's like, "Oh, don't even trip." Big H is telling him, "Hold on, man, kick back. Let me find out what's going on." Cass like, "No, cuz, I'm just to do my stuff on this dude." So when they walk outside of the chow hall and into the other part of the building, all of a sudden you hear, "Get down, get down, get down!" Boom! And a big old shot. Now, by that also being my first time in prison, I don't know if they've shot the block gun or if they had shot the Mini 14, because that was the first time that I'd heard it go off, right? And so come to find out, and then I heard when Big A said, "Oh man, they shot him." So I'm thinking that, they had shot him with the block gun. I mean, they had shot him with the Mini 14. Come to find out later on, they had only shot him with the block gun. So after Big H did some more investigation, what ended up happening was when Cass was on the way in the chow hall, Cass was a Crip. It was 2 Bloods in the line before him. And as they was talking, one Blood said to the other, "Yeah, man, he, this piss colored," and he called him the N-word, talk about, "Oh yeah, this piss colored N-word," talking about Cass, because Cass was, he was light complected, right? So of course Cass took offense to that. I don't even believe that Cass knew these dudes, right? So not only do I not know y'all, but y'all talking about me, or at least you are talking about me in a disrespectful fashion. So when they got outside, soon as, like Cass said, man, as soon as they got outside, when they walked out the thing, boop, bop, boop, bop, boop. Cash put them lefts and rights on him with all his might. I guess the CO in the tower seen what was going on, and he came over there. And he, bam, he bust the block gun or whatever, right? But, and so those were just some of the first things, that I seen, coming to prison. Once again, back, like I said, I had 9 years plus life, and I skipped over this part. Sorry about that. So I had 9 years plus life. So now I'm still fighting this trailing murder case. So I'm talking about going to trial and this and that. And the DA told my lawyer if he could find any other crime that I was concretely participated in, they was going to ask for life without, life without for me. So they was talking about trying to give me a deal for 25 years to life after my 9 years to life was served. So eventually, though, my lawyer was able to get me a deal for voluntary manslaughter, 16 years. So what he ended up doing is the DA was willing to run the 16 years concurrently with the 9 years, but he would not run it. He would not run it concurrently with the 9 years plus life. So basically, instead of 9 years plus life, I ended up with 16 years plus life. So I had to serve the 16 years first, which was back in those days. You could get halftime, so I could serve half of 16. Then I would start doing a life sentence, which was I was eligible for parole after 7 years. And so that's how I ended up with 16 years plus life. So, being in prison for the first time, definitely was an eye opener. I seen a lot of things. It was the first time I went to prison, so just watching, learning, taught me how to do time. I remember there was one dude, man. I heard he passed away. His name was T-Rock. T-Rock was from, initially I thought he was from Compton because he ran with the Compton car, but I believe he was from Linwood. T-Rock was probably about 5'7", 5'8", possibly. Brown skin, maybe about 155, 60 pounds, man. But him being of a smaller stature did not matter. He loved to fight, and he had a split hair temper is what we would call it, or excuse me, a trigger hair temper. He didn't play, man, and if you gambled with him and you lost, he expected you to have his money in the morning on the unlock. He don't care if it was $1, he don't care if it was $5 or whatever. Actually, me and him, we made a bet about something, and I ended up losing the bet, and I forgot to bring the money out the very next day on the first unlock. Man, he approached me, he was like very angry, like, "Hey, what's up, homie? You got my money?" I said, "No, man, my bad, I forgot it." He like, "Man, you ain't supposed to forget. I'm telling you, homie, listen, man, when you owe somebody, you gotta pay, blah, 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 blah." He was extremely upset, man, and he just wanted his money, and it wasn't nothing but $1. So I went in on the next unlock, or whenever I was able to go in, and I brought him out a can opener, and he had no problem with that. He just wanted to be paid, and he wanted his money, you know what I'm saying? And so, because he gambled a whole lot. Later on, I remember seeing him fire on one of his homeboys. They was on the yard together. And I don't know what his homie had done or whatever, what they got into it about. I believe they was cellies. I don't know. But he was out there on the yard, and he walked up to his homie, or I believe, no, his homie walked up to him, because I remember T-Rock saying, "Hey, man, show me your hands. What's in your hands?" Because there was something that was brewing and going on between them. So I guess his younger homie had went and talked to somebody or whatever, man, and so trying to get some advice or whatever. So when he walked up on T-Rock was concerned with him having a weapon, trying to make sure he didn't have no weapon. And so once he told him, "Hey, man, show me your hands. What's in your hands?" Once he opened his, because he had his hands in his pocket. Once he pulled out his hands and opened his hands and seen that he didn't have no weapon, boom, bop, boom, bop, boom. T-Rock smashed on him right there, three-pieced him a couple times. I can't give y'all the good sounds because of the jaw. But yeah, he pieced the old boy up, and old boy ended up leaving and rolling up off the yard, So just seeing things like that, man, made me realize, prison definitely was a serious place, and I had to conduct myself in a certain way to alleviate certain situations. I told you guys before, I seen a situation where two dudes was playing handball. I guess both of them thought that they could beat the other one, and they bet on the handball game. So the dude who ended up losing, and I don't know if he lost $50, $60, maybe $100 or whatever, he wasn't gonna pay. I guess he assumed that he could beat the other dude, and if he didn't beat him, he felt that he could beat him up, and so he had no intentions on paying, which I realized later on. So after they finished, they played several games for about an hour or two. When the dude from Orange County asked the other dude from Long Beach, "Hey, man, what's up with my bread?" The dude from Long Beach fired on him, knocked him out. Boop, pop, boop. Hit him, knocked him out right there on the yard. Told him, "Man, you got me messed up. I don't pay no suckers," is what he told him, man. Then they went into the cell, they fought, and the dude from Long Beach beat him up again, man. So situations like that made me see and realize that I had to be extremely mindful of who I kicked it with, who I gambled with. I stopped gambling for a long time anyway, because gambling is something that can definitely be problematic when you're in prison. But anyway, man, that's just a little story right there on some of the first things that I seen when I was in prison. Sentenced to 16 years plus life. And for me, like I said, getting 16 years plus life, and I've seen other people deal with their time differently. But for me, you know, it was just part of the game, man. Of course, I would prefer to be free, but it was just part of the game. You know, it came with the territory. I would say probably, though, maybe about 14 or 15 years into my life sentence, that's when I got tired of doing time. You know, the time became monotonous. You get tired of doing the same thing pretty much every day without much variation. You know, every now and then there may be a fight, there may be a stabbing or a sticking or something like that. But after a while, you know, you're pretty much doing the same thing. You wake up, you go to breakfast, you may come outside, play a little basketball, then go work out, go to school at a certain time, or go learn a trade at a certain time, go to whatever your job is, you know, and for the most part, come back, you know, go to sleep, wake up, and do the same pretty much thing all over again. So anyway, after a while, like I say, after my 15, 16 years, somewhere up in there, the time, you know, I got tired of doing time, got tired of being locked up. But once again, it comes with the territory. And so that's why today, I'm extremely mindful of what I do, where I go, and especially what I say. You know, somebody left a comment the other day, and I extremely appreciated the comment. He said, man, you know, out of a lot of these dudes doing these prison YouTube channels, Chill seems like one of the ones that's only really reformed. And to be honest, I don't really know how reformed I am, but I do understand the magnitude and the loss. Not only I, but other people, everybody who was connected to my case suffered, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm definitely not trying to put myself back in that same position. And so I know that, you know, saying certain things, doing certain things, going certain things, it can all potentially create a situation that I would later regret. And so that's why I'm just mindful of how I interact, you know, the things that I say. You know, one last thing, man, I'll never forget. Chances used to say all the time. Chances, of course, I've interviewed him a whole lot of times, and he was a very insightful dude, full of a lot of wisdom. And he would say, if you don't want no problems, don't act like it. Because you would have a lot of people in prison walking around acting like they was tough, looking like they was hard, mad dogging, and then when things would jump up and get cracking, that person wouldn't have the same energy he had before the fight or before the knife play and all that stuff. You know, dudes want to act like they tough to fit in, but then when it gets cracking, dudes go to telling, they take off running, so on and so forth. And so, you know, the point of the matter is, I have not lost sight on how easy a person can get himself put in a situation. And so, like I say, I try to refrain from doing all things that I consider ignorant of a person of my age, man. But anyway, you already know what time it is. It's your boy, 16 to life. Resume normal program.
I ain't never told y'all, and I ain't never testify. Thugged it on the main line, I never went to SNY.